The tale of Bossk is mostly unknown. To many, he will remain the small Godzilla in a Doctor Who outfit. The guy who said some random reptile-sounding things to Admiral Piet during Episode 5 of Star Wars. But who is this dinosaur man, really? What are his motivations? Is he still rattling around in the Star Wars universe somewhere? Let's find out. Bossk has been around long enough that he has two separate and distinct storylines. One storyline was created before Disney bought the Star Wars franchise and is considered to be total bunk by Disney. None of it is canon, but is dressed up as Star Wars legends to help them generate revenue on things they never developed. We will discuss both versions of Bossk's life and attempt to clarify what story is official canon and what is total rubbish. Probably most of you have already been disillusioned by the sight of a big poop-colored lizard wearing a spacesuit, so let's try to right the ship, shall we? Bossk Wasik Kradosk was born on his homeworld of Trandosha. He was the son of Kradosk, which was why his parents decided to call him what they did. Not only did it rhyme, but it also helped him remember his dad's name, which helped tremendously for a lizard brain like Bossk. When he was born, he ate all of his siblings somehow, despite them all being the same size. Yes, it's pretty awful, but once you get past the gruesomeness of cannibalism, one starts to wonder, how could he fit that much stuff in his little tiny baby belly? Many levels of disturbing. Anyway, his father Kradosk was proud of Bossk's gluttony and secretly traded Bossk's crippled sister to some Wookiees for some booze. Dosh Shanalawuk, or as the Wookiees liked to call her, the sister of Bossk was raised as a Wookiee, which is pretty crazy as you'll see. But this was back in the Legends storyline, and the authors were struggling to make interesting stories. Bossk grew up to revere the Trandoshan god, the Scorekeeper. The Scorekeeper supposedly tracked how many things every Trandoshan killed or defeated, and awarded them points for their brutality. You could lose these points by having something happen to you that would steal your honor, like being captured in combat or getting caught licking your own eyeball. Kradosk and the other Trandoshans believed that the highest level creatures the Scorekeeper cared about were Wookiees, which led to the death and enslavement of countless dozens of Wookiees. Remember the book of Boba Fett when Black Chrysanthemum gets all rowdy with those nerdy Trandoshans? It was because the Trandoshans have been a-holes to the usually peaceful Wookiees for several decades at this point. It's impossible to confirm, but one potential reason for why the Trandoshans hated the Wookiees so much was that the Wookiees had probably been calling the Trandoshans douchebags all the time. So, Bossk spent a lot of time fighting Wookiees and enslaving them and earning points with his math god, and also bounty hunting some here and there. At some point, Bossk found himself on Corellia and murdered Hal Horn, who happened to be the father of famous Corran Horn in the old legends. Corran Horn hated that Bossk was let go for free by the Imperial Magistrate at the time, Curtin Lure, and left Corsac, which is Corellian security, and joined the rebellion, much to the detriment of the Empire. But that's a story for a different time. Eventually, Bossk fell in with a young Boba Fett and helped Fett attempt to kill Mace Windu as an act of revenge for Boba's dead father/self/clone/person. They blew up his Venator-class Star Destroyer, the Endurance, and laid a trap, but Windu had a date with a window, so the plans never came to fruition. They actually got arrested, and Bossk acted like he was Boba's tank. It's unclear why they threw a child into an adult prison. Once they inevitably escaped, Bossk hung out with Boba and even with bounty hunter Ventress, but he wasn't very important and eventually just got left behind and nobody really noticed. His friends were acting like a bunch of douchebags. Beckett's crew in the movie Solo said they could have asked Bossk to come help them, but they decided not to for some reason. Probably Bossk was pricey AF. Once the Empire had taken control of the galaxy, Bossk worked hard to enslave more Wookiees and even fought Chewbacca once. He made enough of a name for himself that when Vader wanted to find Captain Solo in the Millennium Falcon, they called Bossk along with other high-end bounty hunters. Piet said something about how bounty hunters are scum, and instead of using a language everyone would understand, Bossk reverted back to his own language of Dosh to tell Piet, Res Luke Auf, which roughly translates to, I don't really know what I'm saying, no one's ever translated this, they've just made a bunch of sounds for me to say. After Boba captured Han and took him away, Bossk still tried to look for more rebels to capture. He instead encountered Leia, who was acting as Boushh with Lando Calrissian and Chewbacca. Bossk captured Chewbacca on the sly, but then Boushh beat Bossk bloody and bartered with Bossk, barely persuading the bounty hunter to release the Wookiee in exchange for Bosk's life. Leia did a good job of pretending Lando was her bounty when she was just protecting her main snuggler while Han was away. After this, Bossk kind of passes out of the different legends for a while, in the old Legends storyline at least, until Han's pet Chewbacca is eventually killed by a moon crashing into him, and a grieving Han gets trolled at a bar by Bossk. Han broke Bosk's snout, which is interesting because I don't know how much of Bosk's head is his snout. In the current canon storyline, Bossk is still hanging out with lots of other bounty hunters and doing comic book things. In Galaxy of Heroes, Bossk plays a vital role as a facilitator to make his team fast enough to get Mando an early kill with his disintegrate. Bossk should be modded as the fastest bounty hunter on the team, and Greef Karga can be one speed slower. Bossk should also have several protection primary mods to take full advantage of his leadership and the fact that he's a tank. Bossk also has one of the best ships in the game called the Houndstooth. Putting gear and relics on him boosts the ship nicely. In many ways, Bosk's resilience as a Trandoshan is displayed in Galaxy of Heroes. At one point in a canon story, Luke Skywalker chopped off Bosk's arm and leg, and Bossk was able to grow them back because a Trandoshan can do that sort of thing apparently. I wonder if Han hitting him in the snout meant Bossk had to regrow his snout. Bossk attacking the weakest character is interesting to me, since his god really wants him and encourages him to attack the strongest characters possible, which is why the Trandoshans fight the Wookiees all the time. Bossk should be one of a new player's very first Gear 13, with Houndstooth following directly because it's one of the best plug-and-play tanks in the game even before it finds its way onto an Executor comp. When Bossk was first released, he was an incredibly key character to help us unlock the Wookiee Chewbacca, and he still is, though of course there are now other bounty hunters that help a little bit more if you need to. However, I would make the argument that Bossk is one of the very few foundational pieces that every single account should develop at an early time period. Bossk is incredibly important and, honestly, incredibly powerful. All the way up through the endgame, you're not going to find a better investment in a character out there, in my opinion, and the ship will continue to retain its value as one of the best tanks ever. Bossk has always been a fierce competitor, and in a world of very competent beings, he's done a great job of staying relevant in his own stories. He remains similarly relevant in Galaxy of Heroes despite how old a character he is at this point. I hope you enjoyed this video. If there are other Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes characters you would like me to cover, please let me know in the comments and I'll take it into consideration. Thank you all so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Zareth prevails.